The turkey was perfect. Golden, steaming, magazine-worthy. I'd been cooking since 5 in the morning, working alone in the quiet house before sunrise. Mashed potatoes whipped smooth with cream, my grandmother's stuffing made the old-fashioned way, green bean casserole exactly as Julian liked it, cranberry sauce simmered with citrus and cinnamon. Christmas dinner, the one tradition that hadn't collapsed after the divorce, after Julian moved out, after holidays became more obligation than joy. Julian sat at the head of the table like he owned the place, Mara beside him in a red dress that looked expensive and effortless. Diamond earrings sparkled whenever she moved, ones I knew he couldn't afford because I'd been paying his credit card bills ever since Mara's spa started failing. Gail, her mother, sat across from them in crisp white linen, watching me with that sharp smile of hers, like she knew something I didn't. My neighbor Holly and my old colleague Kenneth had joined us, 2 people who genuinely cared about me. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation, the kind of warm holiday chaos you're supposed to be grateful for. But instead of joy, I felt like a ghost at my own table, present, invisible, fading around the edges. "Mom, this is incredible," Julian said, piling food onto his plate. "Thank you," I said, though my smile felt brittle. Mara laughed lightly. "I wish I could cook like this. Everything I make either burns or dies in the oven." Gail seized the moment. "Maybe Lena can teach you, now that she has all that free time. Retirement must leave so many hours empty." Her bracelets chimed as she drank more wine. I smiled tightly. "I'm happy to share recipes." "Oh, I'm sure you are," Gail said. "But don't you ever want to do something just for yourself, instead of taking care of everyone?" Kenneth cleared his throat. "Lena's one of the strongest people I know." Gail waved him off. "Strength has limits. Eventually the younger generation needs to take over. That's natural." The air shifted. Heavy, prickling. Holly noticed and jumped in, changing the subject, asking Julian about work. He launched into complaints about his impossible boss, restructuring at the office, the promotion he hoped for. Mara played the supportive partner, touching his arm, smiling in all the right places. I cut my turkey into tiny pieces I had no intention of eating. My stomach was too tight for food. Then Gail asked the question I'd been bracing for. "So, Lena," she said smoothly, "have you given any more thought to downsizing? A condo, or maybe an active senior community? My friend loves hers. No maintenance, no stress." I set my fork down carefully. "I'm comfortable here. This has been my home for 33 years. Gail leaned in slightly. "But it's such a big house for one person. The yard, the roof that'll need replacing, the old furnace, the drafty windows. So much responsibility. Wouldn't you rather have fewer worries? More freedom?" The table went quiet, and I finally understood what tonight was really about. I like my responsibilities, and I like my freedom just fine the way it is. I'm not interested in changing anything. But at your age, I'm 58, Gail, not 90. I'm not ready for assisted living. I'm not even close to ready for that. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes stayed cold, calculated, predatory. "I didn't mean it like that. You're being so sensitive. I just meant, wouldn't it be nice to travel, to enjoy your retirement, to see the world instead of being tied down to a house that's probably worth quite a bit of money in this market? Real estate values have gone up so much in the past few years. You could sell this place, pocket the cash, and really live. Go to Europe, take a cruise, do all the things you've been putting off. Isn't that what you've been working toward all these years? I'm not interested in selling my house. This is where I want to be." "But you could help Julian and Mara," Gail pressed, leaning forward like she was sharing some great wisdom, like she was doing me a favor. "They're young. They're just starting out. They need space for Mara's business. This house would be perfect for her spa expansion. Treatment rooms upstairs, consultation spaces downstairs, maybe even a yoga studio in the basement. It's ideal. And you could take your share of the money and go wherever you want. Everyone wins. It's perfect." The table went silent. Everyone stopped eating. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. Julian shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable. "Gail, we haven't talked about that. That's not something we've discussed." "Haven't you?" I asked quietly, looking at my son, really looking at him. "Haven't you talked about taking my house?" "Mom, no, that's not what this is." "Because I heard you," I said, my voice still quiet but gaining strength. 3 weeks ago. You and Mara, talking about how this house is wasted on me. How I'm just sitting here like a spider in the middle of a web, holding on to something I don't need while you struggle. How it's not fair that I have all this space while you're crammed into that tiny rental. How I should downsize so you can move up. Mara's face flushed red, spreading from her neck to her cheeks. That's not what we said. You're twisting our words. Aren't I? Because I have excellent hearing. And thin walls. And you weren't exactly whispering. You're eavesdropping now? Mara's voice rose. You're spying on private conversations? In my own house? The house you were plotting to take? We weren't plotting anything. We were just talking about options. About the future. About what might make sense for everyone involved. It was just a conversation. Without asking me, without including me. Just planning my life like I'm already gone. Like I'm already dead and you're dividing up my estate. Julian set down his fork. His face was getting red now, too. Mom, you're being paranoid. You're making this into something it's not. That word. Paranoid. Like I was crazy. Like I was imagining things. Like my reality wasn't real. Am I? I asked. Yes, you are. We're your family. We love you. We want what's best for you. And maybe Gail has a point. Maybe this house is too much for you. Maybe it would be better if you had less to worry about. Less stress, less responsibility. So you do want me to sell? I want you to be happy, he said, but his voice was strained, tight, angry underneath, like he was holding something back. I want you to stop being so stubborn about everything. I want you to stop acting like we're trying to hurt you when we're just trying to help, when we're just trying to have an honest conversation about practical matters. By taking my house, by giving you options, by opening a dialogue, by trying to plan for the future like adults. His voice cracked like a whip. Holly flinched. Kenneth's jaw tightened. Gail smiled behind her wineglass. Julian stood up. His chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound that made everyone wince. You know what? I can't do this. I can't sit here and be the villain because I'm trying to have an honest conversation with you. I can't be the bad guy because I'm thinking ahead. Julian, Mara said softly, touching his hand, trying to calm him down. Maybe we should. No, he said, pulling his hand away from hers. No, I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. She's been like this my entire life, controlling, manipulative, making me feel guilty for existing, making me feel like I owe her something for doing what parents are supposed to do. That's not fair, Holly said, her voice sharp. That's completely unfair and you know it. Isn't it? Julian turned on her, his face getting redder. Do you know what it's like to have a mother who gave up everything for you? Who reminds you every single day, in 1,000 tiny ways, that she sacrificed her entire life so you could have a roof over your head? Who makes you feel like you owe her your existence just because she decided to keep you when Dad left? Who acts like every good thing she did was some kind of burden she bore alone? Julian, stop, Kenneth said, his voice hard, commanding. You need to stop right now. Why? Why should I stop? Someone needs to say it. Someone needs to tell the truth. She's suffocating me. She's always been suffocating me. Even now, when I'm 34 years old with my own life and my own wife and my own problems, she's still trying to control everything. Still trying to make everything about her. Still playing the martyr. Still acting like she's the only one who's ever suffered. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like water, like they might not hold me. I think you should leave, right now. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. The second anyone says something she doesn't want to hear, she shuts down. She kicks people out. She makes herself the victim. She can't handle any criticism, any honesty, any reality that doesn't match her version of things. Julian, that's enough, Holly said, standing up too now. You need to stop talking. You need to leave. You're way out of line. No, it's not enough. He was yelling now, his voice echoing in the dining room. His face was dark red. His hands were shaking. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of feeling guilty every single day of my life. I'm tired of feeling like I can't breathe in my own life because she's always there, hovering, judging, waiting for me to fail so she can swoop in and save me again and add it to the list of things I owe her for. The endless list of sacrifices I'm supposed to be grateful for. I never asked you for anything, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Not once, not ever. You didn't have to. That's the problem. That's the whole problem. You just did everything and then looked at me with those sad eyes like I should be grateful, like I should spend my entire life thanking you for doing what parents are supposed to do. Well, I'm done. I'm done feeling guilty. I'm done feeling like I'm not enough. I'm done feeling like I have to choose between you and my own happiness, between your feelings and my life. He grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. Mara stood up too. looking uncomfortable, but not stopping him, not disagreeing with him, just standing there and letting him destroy me. "Julian, please," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Let's just calm down and—" "No, I'm done calming down. I'm done being reasonable. I'm done pretending. You want to know what I really think, Mom? You want to know the truth?" I stood there, frozen, knowing something terrible was coming, but unable to stop it. Unable to move, unable to do anything but wait for the blow. He looked at me. My son. The boy I'd raised alone after his father abandoned us. The child I'd sacrificed everything for. The baby I'd held in my arms and promised to protect forever. And he said the words that shattered everything. "I wish you'd just disappear." The room went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. Like time had stopped. Holly gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Kenneth's face went dark red, like he was about to explode. Gail looked down at her plate, but I saw it. The tiny smile at the corner of her mouth. The satisfaction. I stood there, staring at my son, and felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That had broken years ago when his father left me for a woman 10 years younger and never looked back, never called, never sent child support, never acknowledged that he had a son. This was something deeper, something more final, something that couldn't be repaired or healed or forgiven. My will to keep fighting, my will to keep sacrificing, my will to keep existing as someone's mother before I was someone's person. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't defend myself or throw things or collapse dramatically or beg him to take it back. I just turned, very calmly, like I was moving through water, and walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat from the closet, slipped on my shoes, the wrong shoes for snow, but I didn't care. Opened the front door. "Mom, wait," Julian called, his voice suddenly different, like he was waking up from something, like reality was crashing back down on him. I didn't wait, didn't look back, didn't acknowledge him. I walked out into the snow. The cold hit me like a physical force, like walking into a wall, stealing my breath. It was snowing hard, the kind of heavy, wet snow that makes everything quiet and muffled, like the world has been wrapped in cotton and all sound has been absorbed. Fat flakes fell from the black sky, catching in my hair, melting on my face, soaking through my thin coat within seconds. I walked down the driveway, down the street. My shoes weren't meant for snow. They were nice flats, the kind you wear to look presentable at dinner, not to walk through a blizzard. My coat was too thin. I'd forgotten my gloves on the hall table, my scarf too. My hands were already going numb, fingers turning red and then white. I didn't care. The physical discomfort was almost welcome. It gave me something to focus on besides the words echoing in my head. "I wish you'd just disappear." Behind me, I heard the front door open. Julian's voice calling my name, sounding panicked now, the anger gone and replaced with something else. Fear, maybe, or regret. The realization of what he'd said. I didn't turn around to find out which. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, leaving footprints in the fresh snow. My feet crunched through the accumulation. Each step left a clear print behind me, filling in slowly with new snow. My breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. The street was empty. Everyone else was inside, warm, with their families, celebrating the holiday like normal people. Windows glowed with golden light. I could see shadows moving behind curtains. Laughter and music drifted out when doors opened briefly. I walked past Holly's house, her windows cheerful with Christmas lights. Past the Johnsons' place with their elaborate light display that they spent a week setting up every year. Past the corner store that was closed for the holiday. I just walked, with no destination, no plan, just the need to move, to put distance between myself and those words, between myself and that moment. I wish you'd just disappear. I thought about everything I'd done for him, every sacrifice I'd made, every choice I'd made that put him first and me last, that erased my needs in favor of his wants. When his father left, Julian was 12, confused, angry, lost. I remember the day Daniel walked out, packed a suitcase while Julian was at school, left a note on the kitchen counter saying he'd met someone else, someone who made him feel alive again, someone who didn't remind him of his failures. He took half the money from our joint account and disappeared. I came home from work and found the note and just stood there, reading it over and over, unable to process it. I worked 2 jobs to keep the house because I didn't want Julian to have to move, didn't want him to lose his school and his friends on top of losing his father. I worked the day shift at the accounting firm and then waitressed at night at a restaurant downtown, coming home at midnight smelling like grease and other people's food, my feet swollen and my back aching. I'd sleep for 5 hours and then get up and do it again. For 3 years, I lived on 5 hours of sleep and coffee and the determination to give my son stability. I paid for his college. The whole thing. $45,000 from my retirement account because he didn't qualify for financial aid. Our income was just high enough to disqualify him, but not high enough to actually pay for college, and I refused to let him start his life drowning in debt the way so many kids do. He dropped out after a year, said it wasn't for him, that he needed to find himself, that college was just a waste of money, that he was learning more about life by living it. I didn't argue. I didn't throw it in his face. I didn't say anything about the $45,000 that was now just gone. I just asked what he wanted to do instead and how I could help. He moved back home, got a job at a call center, lost it after 3 months for excessive absences. Got another job at a retail store, lost that one too for arguing with customers. Got a job at the auto financing company. Kept it, thank God, but the pay was terrible for the first 2 years. Barely enough to cover his expenses. I paid his rent when he finally moved out. Every month for 18 months, I quietly transferred $700 into his account so he could make rent and still afford food and gas. I watched my savings account shrink month after month. I covered his car payments when he bought a used sedan that immediately needed $1,200 in repairs. The timing belt, the transmission, brake pads, new tires. I paid off his credit cards more times than I could count, watching the balances climb to $5,000, then $8,000, then $15,000, and each time I'd call the credit card company and pay them off in full and never mention it to Julian. I never told him about any of it, never made him feel small or incapable or like he owed me. I just did it quietly, in the background of his life, hoping he'd find his footing eventually, hoping he'd grow into the responsible adult I knew he could be. Then he met Mara. She was beautiful, polished, confident in a way I'd never been. She ran a beauty spa that was barely breaking even, hemorrhaging money, actually, but she talked about it like it was an empire in the making, like she was just one investment away from franchising, from becoming the next big thing. She had a vision board and a 5-year plan and an Instagram account with filtered photos of treatments and inspirational quotes about female empowerment and self-care. Julian fell hard and fast. Proposed after 6 months. Married her 3 months later in a ceremony that cost $32,000. I saw the invoices. Open bar, string quartet, destination bachelorette party in Miami, custom dress from a boutique in Baltimore, flowers imported from somewhere exotic. I paid for half because Gail called me crying, saying she couldn't afford her share and didn't want Mara to be disappointed on her special day, didn't want her to have to compromise her vision. So I took out a loan, went into debt for the first time since my divorce, went into debt for a wedding that lasted 4 hours, and now here I was, walking through the snow in the dark. Alone, cold, numb. Because my son, the boy I'd given up everything for, wished I would disappear. I stopped walking, stood in the middle of the empty street and looked up at the sky. Snow fell on my face. Cold, wet, real. The only real thing in a world that suddenly felt like it was made of cardboard and lies, like a stage set that could be knocked over with one good push. So be it, I whispered to the darkness, to the snow, to the indifferent universe. My voice sounded strange, calm, decided, final. I turned around, walked back to the house, my footprints already filling in with fresh snow, disappearing like I soon would. The front door was still open. I could hear voices inside, arguing, Julian and Mara, Holly trying to calm everyone down, Kenneth's deep voice saying something I couldn't make out, Gail probably sitting there smiling, satisfied, having gotten exactly what she wanted. I walked past them all without looking. Didn't make eye contact with anyone, didn't acknowledge the concerned looks or the attempts to speak to me, just walked straight through the dining room, past the table still covered with food that no one was eating anymore, past the half-full wine glasses and the burned-down candles. I went upstairs to my office, closed the door, locked it, heard Julian try the handle a moment later. Mom? Mom, please? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Can we talk? I didn't answer, just stood there until his footsteps retreated down the stairs. I sat down at my desk, pulled out the file folder I kept in the bottom drawer, and spread everything across the wooden surface. The deed to the house, my name alone on the title, clear and uncontested. Bank statements showing the joint checking account I still shared with Julian for some stupid reason, even though he'd moved out 3 years ago. I'd kept it open thinking it would help him, give him a safety net. Investment accounts, retirement savings that I'd rebuilt after paying for his college, slowly, carefully, putting away money every month even when it hurt, life insurance policies naming him as the beneficiary. The will I'd written 5 years ago, leaving everything to Julian because he was my only child, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Couldn't imagine a world where I'd want anyone but him to have the home I'd built. I stared at the papers for a long time, until the words started to blur. Then I opened my laptop and started making calls. It took 5 days to dismantle my entire life. 5 days to erase myself from Grayshore, from this house, from Julian's world. Day 1, I called a real estate agent. Not Karen Mitchell, who'd lived in Grayshore for 40 years and knew everyone and would immediately call Julian to ask what was going on. Not someone local who would ask questions or try to talk me out of it, or worse, call Julian to let him know what I was doing. I called an agent from 2 towns over, a woman named Diane Chen, who answered on the second ring and didn't know me, didn't know my son, didn't know anything about my life except that I wanted to sell fast. "How fast?" she asked, her voice professional but curious. "This week, by Friday if possible." There was a pause. "Mrs. Mirel, that's not really how real estate works. We need to stage the house, do inspections, list it properly, have showings, negotiate offers. The process usually takes at least 30 days, often longer. I don't care about any of that. Cash offer, no inspections, no contingencies, no repairs. As is sale, I just want it done." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you in some kind of trouble? Because if there's a lien or a foreclosure situation..." "No, nothing like that. I'm just done. I want out, and I want out now." "May I ask why?" "You may not." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "All right. I know some investors who might be interested. Let me make some calls." She found a buyer in 24 hours, an investor from Baltimore who wanted to flip properties, who'd been looking for something in Grayshore because the market was good and the location was desirable. He didn't care that the roof needed work in a few years, or that the furnace was old, or that some of the windows were original to the house. He just wanted the property, wanted the address, wanted the potential. We settled on a price that was probably $20,000 below market value. Diane told me I was leaving money on the table. I told her I didn't care. We closed the next day at a title company, me signing paper after paper after paper, initialing and dating and signing away 33 years of my life. The buyer, a man in his 40s with expensive shoes and a practiced handshake, smiled at me. "This is a great house. Great bones. I'll fix it up and flip it in 6 months. Should make a nice profit." I just nodded, signed the last paper, took the check, walked out. Day 2, I went to the bank, walked up to the teller, a young woman named Ashley who I'd seen dozens of times over the years, who always asked about Julian, and asked to close all my accounts. "All of them?" she asked, confused, pulling up my information on her computer. "Mrs. Morel, are you sure? You've had some of these accounts for decades." "Every single one. Close them all." "Can I ask why? Did something happen? Did someone compromise your accounts?" "No. I just want them closed." The joint checking with Julian. My personal savings. The money market account where I'd been putting money aside for emergencies. I withdrew everything in cashier's checks made out to myself. Then I drove to my investment firm and met with my advisor. Tom had been handling my accounts for 15 years. He was in his late 50s, professional, always sent me quarterly reports, and called to discuss strategy. He looked confused when I told him what I wanted. "Lena, I don't understand. You want to liquidate everything? Your retirement accounts, your mutual funds, everything?" "Everything. I want it all in cash." "But you're going to lose 30% to taxes and penalties, early withdrawal fees, capital gains. Let me show you the numbers." He started pulling up spreadsheets on his computer, but I stopped him. "I've seen the numbers. I know what I'm losing. Just process it." "Lena, this is your retirement. Everything you've saved for 30 years. Are you sick? Are you in some kind of trouble? Because if you need money, there are better ways to access it without destroying your future." "My future is exactly what I'm thinking about. Just do it." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. But Lena, I hope you know what you're doing." "So do I." He processed the liquidation. I walked out with checks totaling $372,000. Everything I'd saved over 30 years of working. Everything I'd rebuilt after the divorce when I'd been left with almost nothing. Everything I'd protected and grown and planned to use for my retirement, for my old age, for the time when I couldn't work anymore. Day 3, I called my lawyer. An elderly man named Robert Brennan who'd handled my divorce and written my first will, who'd been my attorney for almost 25 years. His secretary tried to make an appointment for next week, but I insisted on seeing him immediately. "Robert, I need to change my will, completely rewrite it." He looked at me over his reading glasses, concern in his eyes. What changes are you thinking about, Lena? I want to leave everything to charity, a scholarship fund for single mothers trying to finish college. Julian gets nothing. I want him completely removed. Silence filled his office. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Outside, I could hear traffic passing by. Lena, he said finally, what happened? Does it matter? It might. If Julian contests the will, if he claims undue influence or diminished capacity, he won't have grounds. I'm of sound mind. I'm doing this voluntarily. No one is forcing me or manipulating me. I just want him written out completely. I want him to inherit nothing. You're his mother. And he's my son. And he told me he wished I would disappear, so I'm granting that wish. Robert took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He looked old suddenly, tired. I've known you for 25 years. I've never seen you like this. Maybe you've never really seen me at all? If you're certain, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. We met that afternoon. He drew up the new documents, reading each section aloud to make sure I understood. I signed them, had them witnessed by his secretary and his paralegal, had them notarized. Julian's name appeared nowhere in any of the paperwork. Instead, everything would go to a scholarship fund I was creating, administered by a foundation, helping single mothers finish their education so they wouldn't end up trapped and powerless the way I'd been. Day 4, I started getting rid of my belongings. Everything I'd accumulated over 33 years, furniture, clothes, books, dishes, photographs, everything that made this house a home. I called a charity that picked up furniture donations. They came with a truck, and I pointed at everything. All of it, the driver asked, looking around my living room with wide eyes. Everything except what's in my bedroom. They took the couch where Julian had sat on Christmas, the dining table where he'd said those words, the chairs we'd sat in for hundreds of meals, the coffee table where he'd done homework as a child, the bookshelves his father had built before he left, the TV we'd watched movies on, everything. Then I went through my closets. 30 years of accumulated clothing, dresses for occasions I'd never attend again, coats for winters. I wouldn't spend here. Shoes, scarves, jewelry. I kept 2 suitcases worth. Everything else went into bags for donation. I found photo albums in the hall closet. Pictures of Julian as a baby, as a toddler, as a child. Birthday parties, school plays, Little League games, Christmas mornings. In every single picture, I was there, smiling, proud, always in the background, making everything happen, holding everything together. I almost kept them. Then I put them in a box and donated them too. Let someone else have memories of a happy family. Kitchen supplies, the plates we'd eaten on for decades, the pots and pans I'd cooked with, the mixer I'd used to make Julian's birthday cakes every year, the recipe box with my grandmother's handwriting, all of it went. The charity came back 3 times that day, each time loading up the truck with more of my life. By the end of the day, the house was empty, except for my bed, 2 suitcases, and my laptop. It echoed when I walked through it, my footsteps too loud, my breathing too obvious. Day 5, I bought a plane ticket, one way. I sat at my laptop for an hour, looking at destinations, not really caring where I went. Just somewhere warm, somewhere far away, somewhere I'd never been and where no one knew my name or my history or my failures. I picked a small town in Florida, not Miami or Orlando or anywhere touristy. Just a quiet place on the coast where I could start over where nobody knew me as Julian's mother. I didn't tell Julian, didn't tell Holly or Kenneth, didn't leave a note or a forwarding address or any way for them to find me. I just bought the ticket and packed my bags and waited for morning. Julian called twice during those 5 days. I let it go to voicemail both times. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was drunk and angry and I said something horrible and I'm sorry. Please call me back. Please, we can fix this. Mom, please, we need to talk. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you're my mom. You're my only parent. We can work through this. Just please call me back. Please. I listened to the messages once. Then I deleted them. Deleted his contact information. Deleted every text message we'd ever exchanged. Erased him from my phone the way he'd erased my value from his life. On the morning of day 6, I woke up at 4 in the morning. Made coffee in a kitchen that echoed because there was nothing to absorb the sound. Sat in the empty living room one last time, watching the darkness fade to gray through the bare windows. This house had been my home for 33 years. I'd painted every wall, some of them multiple times as my tastes changed. I'd planted the garden in the backyard, spending weekends on my knees in the dirt. I'd fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom after watching YouTube videos. I'd replaced the broken step on the back porch. I'd weatherproofed the windows. I'd raised my son here, watching him grow from a baby to a man. I'd cried here when my marriage ended. I'd celebrated here when Julian graduated high school, so proud of him. I'd survived here through everything life threw at me, and now I was leaving and never coming back. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, and dried it, left it on the counter for the new owners along with the key. Then I picked up my 2 suitcases and walked out the door, but I had one more stop to make first. Julian lived in a small rental house on the east side of town, a 2-bedroom bungalow with peeling paint and a sagging front porch that probably wasn't up to code. The neighborhood was quiet, working class, the kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions about their neighbors. He'd lived there for 3 years, ever since he moved out of my house. I'd driven past it hundreds of times, sometimes stopping to drop off food or help with something that needed fixing. I'd paid his rent for 2 of those 3 years, sending $700 every month like clockwork, watching it drain from my account, never saying a word. I drove there at dawn. The streets were empty except for a few early workers heading to their shifts. The sky was that pale gray color that comes before sunrise, everything washed out and colorless. His car was in the driveway, a Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door from when he'd backed into a pole in a parking lot 2 years ago and didn't have the money to fix it properly. The house was dark, all the windows black. He was still asleep, probably sleeping off the wine from dinner, probably not even thinking about what he'd said. I parked on the street, pulled the emergency key from my keychain, the one he'd given me 5 years ago when he first moved out, pressing it into my hand and saying, "Just in case, Mom. You never know when I might lock myself out. And if there's ever an emergency, you can get in to check on me." I'd kept it on my keychain ever since, never used it except once when he called me at midnight, locked out and drunk, needing me to rescue him. I unlocked the front door as quietly as possible, wincing at the click of the deadbolt, stepped inside. The house smelled like old pizza and unwashed laundry and the particular staleness of a place where a young man lived alone without really cleaning. Dishes piled in the sink, some with food still crusted on them. Mail scattered across the coffee table, bills mostly, some marked final notice, a gaming console on the floor with controllers tangled in their cords, empty beer bottles on the end table, the life of a man who'd never really had to grow up because someone had always been there to catch him when he fell. I walked through the dim house to the dining table. It was small, cheap, probably from IKEA, one of those flat-pack things that comes in a box. The same table where he'd eaten countless meals I'd brought over, where we'd celebrated his 30th birthday with a cake I'd baked, chocolate with vanilla frosting, his favorite since he was 6, where I'd helped him fill out job applications when he was unemployed, teaching him how to make his spotty work history sound better than it was. I set down the envelope. It was thick, heavy, a 9x12 manila envelope stuffed full. I'd spent all of day 4 preparing it, going through my records, making copies, organizing everything chronologically so he could see the full scope of what I'd done. Inside were receipts, bank statements, copies of every check I'd written to keep him afloat, evidence of every sacrifice I'd made that he'd never known about, a paper trail of love and sacrifice and enabling, the rent payments, every single one, 18 months' worth, stapled together chronologically. $7,800 total, each check with rent written in the memo line. The car payments when he couldn't make them, 6 months' worth before he finally got caught up, $2,400. The insurance I'd paid when his coverage lapsed and he was driving uninsured, $800. The credit card bills, 3 different cards, all maxed out, all paid off by me. $15,000 in credit card debt that he'd racked up on clothes and electronics and dinners out, and things he wanted but couldn't afford. I'd attached the statements showing the charges, video games, concert tickets, a new phone, expensive dinners, clothes from stores he had no business shopping at, the college tuition, $45,000, the receipt from my retirement account withdrawal showing the date and the amount and the 30% penalty I'd paid for early withdrawal. And below it, his withdrawal notice from the university, dated 1 year later. The medical bills from when he'd broken his arm playing basketball and didn't have insurance, $4,000 for the emergency room and the surgery and the physical therapy. I'd set up a payment plan and paid it off over 2 years, all of it, every penny, every sacrifice, documented, dated, undeniable, a complete financial history of everything I'd done to keep him from failing. And at the very top, folded carefully, a letter I'd written the night before. I'd sat on the floor of my empty house, laptop open, and typed until my fingers hurt and my eyes burned and I'd cried all the tears I had left to cry. "Julian, you told me to disappear. I listened. This envelope contains everything I ever did for you. Every sacrifice I made, every bill I paid, every time I went without so you could have more, every time I chose your comfort over mine, every time I protected you from the consequences of your choices. I never told you about any of it because I didn't want you to feel guilty. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me. I didn't want you to feel burdened by the weight of my love. I wanted you to feel loved. I wanted you to feel secure. I wanted you to feel like you had a safety net, like no matter what happened, no matter what mistakes you made, you'd be okay because I would catch you. But love without respect is just servitude. And I'm done serving. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done being treated like an obstacle to your happiness instead of the person who's been holding you up your entire life. I'm done being invisible except when you need something. I'm done being the backup plan, the safety net, the person you only remember exists when everything else fails. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope Mara and her mother give you everything you think you need. I hope this house, this life, this freedom from your suffocating mother brings you the joy you're searching for. But mostly, I hope you learn to value people before you lose them, because you've lost me, not because I stopped loving you. I will probably love you until the day I stop breathing. That's what mothers do. That's the curse and the blessing of this relationship. But I've finally started loving myself enough to walk away from someone who wishes I didn't exist. You wanted me to disappear? Consider your wish granted. I'm going somewhere you won't find me. I'm starting over where nobody knows me as your mother, where I'm just Lena, where I can figure out who I am, when I'm not defined by what I can give you. Don't look for me. I won't be found. If you ever grow up enough to understand what you had and what you threw away, maybe someday we can talk again. But that's a big if. And it's not a promise. It's not even a hope. It's just a possibility that I'm leaving open because I'm too weak to completely close the door on you. But for now, and for the foreseeable future, I'm done. Goodbye, Mom. I read it one more time, standing in his dim kitchen as the first light of dawn started filtering through the windows, turning everything gray and ghostly. My hands were steady, my eyes were dry. I'd cried everything out the night before. Now I just felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only the shell. I sealed the envelope, pressed down the metal clasp, left it in the center of the table where he couldn't possibly miss it. Then I pulled out the emergency key, looked at it for a moment. It was just a small brass key, nothing special, but it represented so much. Trust, access, the assumption that I would always be there when he needed me. I set it on the counter next to the dirty dishes, walked to the door, looked back one last time at the house where my son lived, the house I'd helped him keep, the life I'd helped him build, the life he was destroying with his selfishness and immaturity. Then I walked out, pulled the door shut, heard it lock with a soft click, and walked away without looking back. The airport was 2 hours away in Baltimore. I drove slowly, deliberately, watching Grayshore disappear in my rearview mirror. The town where I'd spent 33 years of my life, where I'd built a life, where I'd raised a child, where I'd worked and saved and sacrificed and loved with everything I had. All of it getting smaller and smaller behind me until it was just a smudge on the horizon, until it disappeared completely and I was driving through unfamiliar territory. I thought about calling someone. Holly would want to know I was leaving. She'd be worried when I didn't answer my door, when my house was empty, when I just vanished. Kenneth would try to talk me out of it, would tell me I was making a decision based on emotion, would counsel patience and family therapy and all the reasonable things that reasonable people do. But what was the point? They'd ask questions I didn't want to answer. They'd try to fix something that couldn't be fixed, that I didn't want fixed. They'd tell me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret this, that Julian needed me even if he didn't know it. But I was done doing what other people needed, done being who they wanted me to be. So I drove in silence, listening to the hum of the engine and the whisper of tires on pavement and my own breathing. When I got to the airport, I parked in long-term parking, left the keys in the ignition, let them tow it eventually. I wouldn't need a car where I was going. I wouldn't need anything except a fresh start and the money in my bank account, and the freedom to finally figure out who Lena was when she wasn't someone's mother. I checked my bags at the counter. The woman behind the desk smiled at me with professional boredom, someone who'd checked in thousands of passengers and would check in thousands more. Traveling alone today? Yes. Business or pleasure? I thought about that for a moment. What was this? Not business. Not really pleasure either. New beginning, I finally said. She smiled, not really listening, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Sounds nice. Have a great flight. She printed my boarding pass and I walked away, pulling my carry-on behind me. I went through security. The line was short this early in the morning, just a few business travelers with their laptops and efficient movements. Most people were still home, sleeping off their holiday dinners, surrounded by family and wrapping paper and the warm debris of celebration. I sat at the gate and watched the sun rise through the massive windows, pink and gold spreading across the sky like a painting. Beautiful, indifferent. The world didn't care that my life was ending and beginning at the same time. My phone buzzed. A text from Holly. "Lena, where are you? Julian just called me. He's freaking out. He found some envelope at his house and now he's trying to reach you and your phone keeps going to voicemail. Please call me. I'm really worried." I stared at the message for a long time. Thought about responding. Thought about explaining. Thought about easing everyone's worry because that's what I'd always done. Smoothed things over. Made everything okay for everyone else. Then I turned off my phone. Walked over to the trash can next to my seat. Dropped it in. I wouldn't need it where I was going. Wouldn't need the contacts or the history or the connection to a life I was leaving behind. I'd get a new phone when I arrived. A new number, a fresh start. They called my boarding group. I stood up, walked down the jetway, found my seat by the window, buckled in. The plane filled up around me, families with small children, the kids excited and loud, business travelers with laptops, already working, a young couple holding hands, whispering to each other and giggling, all of them going somewhere, all of them carrying their lives with them. I had 2 suitcases and a bank account full of money and nothing else, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt light. The plane pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway. The engines roared, building power, and just like that, I disappeared. Julian came home from work at 6:15. He'd had a terrible day, the kind of day that makes you question every choice that led you to this moment. His boss, a middle-aged man with a temper and unrealistic expectations, had spent 2 hours screaming at the entire sales department about missed quotas. Apparently, the team was underperforming. Apparently, if they didn't turn things around immediately, there would be layoffs. Apparently, Julian's numbers were particularly disappointing. Mara had texted him 17 times throughout the day. The spa was about to lose its lease. The landlord was demanding 3 months back rent, or they were out. If he really loved her, he'd find a way to help. If he was a real man, he'd take care of his wife's needs. If he actually cared about their marriage, he'd figure something out. His head was pounding. His stomach was in knots. His hands were shaking slightly from too much coffee and not enough food. He just wanted to eat something mindless and zone out in front of the TV and forget this day had ever happened. He tossed his jacket on the couch, not bothering to hang it up, kicked off his shoes and left them where they landed in the middle of the floor, loosened his tie, walked toward the kitchen, already thinking about what frozen dinner he'd microwave. Maybe that lasagna, or the chicken. That's when he saw it. An envelope on the dining table. He stopped, stared. It was large, thick, heavy-looking. His name was written on the front in his mother's handwriting. That careful, neat script she'd always had. Every letter perfectly formed, the kind that came from growing up before computers when people still wrote things by hand and took pride in their penmanship. He picked it up, felt the weight of it. It was stuffed full of something. He frowned. "What the hell?" he muttered to the empty house. He tore it open, not carefully, just ripping through the metal clasp. Papers spilled out across the table, receipts, bank statements, photocopies of checks. So many papers they covered half the table. He picked up the first one almost randomly. A receipt from his landlord, dated 3 years ago. Rent payment, February 2020, $700. Marked paid in full, and in the memo line, a bank account number he didn't recognize and his mother's name written in her neat script. He stared at it, not understanding. Then he picked up another rent receipt. March 2020, $700. His mother's name again. Another, April, May, June, on and on. 18 months' worth of rent payments, all stapled together, all from his mother. All paid without him knowing. All paid while he'd thought he was handling it himself, being an adult, taking care of his own responsibilities. His hands started shaking harder. He picked up a credit card statement, his name at the top. The card he'd maxed out buying furniture for his apartment when he first moved in. Balance, $15,342. Status, paid in full. Payment date, March 15th, 2021. Payment source, checking account transfer from Lena Morell. Another statement, different card, the one he'd used for car repairs. $8,673. Paid in full, same source. His mother, another, card after card, payment after payment, thousands and thousands of dollars. He sank into a chair, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. He felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. His college tuition, a receipt from the university bursar's office, official seal at the top. Payment received for Julian Morel, fall 2018 semester. Amount paid, $22,500. Payment source, retirement account withdrawal, Lena Morel. Early withdrawal penalty, $6,750. Below it, his withdrawal notice from the university dated spring 2019. I am withdrawing from my studies effective immediately. He'd wasted $45,000 of her retirement money, and she'd never said a word. Car payments, 6 months of them, $2,400. Insurance he'd let lapse, $800. Medical bills from when he'd broken his arm, $4,000. Utility bills he'd sworn he'd paid himself, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. The papers covered the entire table, dozens of them, years' worth of evidence, hundreds of thousands of dollars he'd never known about, a complete record of his failures and her rescues. Then he found the letter. It was folded at the bottom of the pile, underneath everything else. He unfolded it with shaking hands. The paper rattled audibly in the quiet house. He read the first line. Julian, you told me to disappear. His stomach dropped. He felt like the floor had opened up beneath him. He kept reading. Each word hit him like a physical blow. Each sentence made it harder to breathe. By the time he reached the end, he couldn't see straight. His vision was blurry. He realized his face was wet. He was crying. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God." He grabbed his phone with shaking fingers. Nearly dropped it. Called her. The call went to a message that said the number was no longer in service. The automated voice was cheerful, indifferent. He called again, thinking he'd misdialed. Same message. He jumped up, knocking his chair over backward with a crash. Ran to his car. Drove to her house, breaking every speed limit, running red lights, his heart hammering so hard in his chest he thought it might explode. The driveway was empty. The windows were dark. No car, no lights, nothing. He got out and ran to the front door. Rang the doorbell repeatedly, hearing it echo inside. Pounded on the door with both fists. "Mom, Mom, please, open the door. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." No answer. He looked through the front window, pressing his face against the glass. His breath fogged it up. He wiped it away and looked again. Inside, the living room was empty. No couch, no furniture, no pictures on the walls, no curtains. Nothing. Just empty space and bare walls. "No," he said. "No, no, 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 no." He ran around to the back, looked through the kitchen window. Empty. The bedroom window. Empty. Every room he could see was completely empty. He stood in her backyard, the snow soaking through his dress shoes, and the reality crashed down on him like a building collapsing. She was gone. Really gone. Not just angry and staying with a friend, gone. Actually, completely, permanently gone. He got back in his car, drove to Holly's house, ran up to her door and pounded on it until she answered, wearing a bathrobe and looking startled and worried. "Julian, what's happening? Where is she?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. Holly blinked. "Who?" "My mom. Where is my mom?" "I don't know. I've been trying to reach her all day, since yesterday, actually. She's not answering. Why? What's going on?" He showed her the letter with shaking hands. She took it, read it. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Oh, Julian," she whispered. "Oh my God. What did you do?" "I need to find her. Please. You have to know where she went." "I don't know. She didn't tell me anything. She hasn't answered my calls since Christmas dinner. I've been worried, but I thought she just needed space after what happened." He called Kenneth. Woke him up. Same response. Kenneth hadn't heard from her, didn't know where she was. Sounded concerned, but not surprised when Julian explained. "She was done, Julian. I saw it in her eyes when she walked out of that dinner. You broke something in her, something fundamental. I need to find her. Please. You have to help me." "I don't think she wants to be found." "And Julian? I don't think you have the right to find her, not after what you said." "I didn't mean it. I was drunk. I was angry." "Doesn't matter. You said it, and she believed you, and now she's gone." Julian called the police, drove to the station at midnight, filed a missing persons report with an officer who looked bored and annoyed at being bothered. "Sir, your mother is 58 years old. She's an adult. If she chose to leave voluntarily, that's not a crime. That's a choice." "But she just disappeared. Everything's gone. Her house is empty. Her phone doesn't work." "Did she leave a note?" "Yes, a letter." "Then she didn't disappear, sir. She left, intentionally. There's a difference. A big difference. You have to find her. Please. She could be in danger." "Is there any evidence of foul play? Any signs of struggle? Any indication that she was forced to leave against her will? No, but then we'll make a report. But unless there's evidence of foul play or diminished mental capacity, there's nothing we can legally do. Adults are allowed to go wherever they want. It's called freedom. Julian drove back to her house, sat in the driveway until dawn, stared at the empty windows, called her disconnected phone over and over, as if somehow the 100th call would work when the first 99 hadn't. Then he sat there and cried. Really cried, the way he hadn't cried since he was a small child. Great, heaving sobs that shook his entire body, that made him gasp for air, that left him empty and exhausted. Because he finally understood. He understood what he'd done, what he'd destroyed, what he'd thrown away with those 5 careless words spoken in anger. I wish you'd just disappear. And she'd listened. She'd actually done it. And he'd lost her forever. The weeks blurred together into a gray haze of regret and self-destruction. Julian stopped going to work after 3 days of calling in. He just stopped answering when his boss called. Eventually, they sent a termination letter via certified mail. He signed for it and set it on the pile of unopened mail without even reading it. He stopped showering regularly, stopped shaving, stopped eating anything except whatever he could microwave or order for delivery. His house became a disaster zone. Dishes piled up, trash overflowed. The smell got bad enough that his neighbors complained. He spent his days sitting at the dining table, surrounded by the papers from the envelope, reading them over and over, adding up the numbers, calculating exactly how much she'd sacrificed. The total kept growing. 50,000, 70,000, 100,000, more. He'd lost count. Mara came by once, a week after everything fell apart. Let herself in with the key she'd kept, though they had been separated for months. She found him sitting in the dark, unshaven, in the same clothes he'd been wearing for days. Julian, what are you doing? You haven't been answering my calls. The spa closed. I had to file for bankruptcy. Where have you been? She's gone. Who's gone? My mom. She left. She's gone. Everything's gone. Okay, well, maybe she just needed some space, some time to cool off. She'll come back. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months, saw the calculation in her eyes, the annoyance at being inconvenienced, the complete lack of empathy or understanding, the way she was already thinking about how this affected her, not about what he was feeling. Did you know? He asked, his voice flat. Know what? That she was paying for everything. My rent, my bills, my credit cards, everything. Did you know? Mara shifted uncomfortably, not quite meeting his eyes. I suspected she was helping you. It was kind of obvious. And you didn't think to mention it? It wasn't my business. What you and your mother did was between you two. We're married. I'm your business. Everything about me is supposed to be your business. Julian, you're being dramatic. So your mom helped you out financially. So what? That's what mothers do. That's their job. She gave up everything for me, everything, and I told her to disappear. You were angry. People say things when they're angry. She'll get over it. No, she won't. She's really gone, and it's my fault. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Her expression shifted from annoyed to resigned. I can't do this anymore. Do what? This, you, us, this whole situation? I need someone who's going to help me build something, someone who's going to be a partner, not someone who's going to fall apart because his mommy left him. Get out. What? I said get out. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Fine. I'll have my lawyer send you the separation papers. The official ones this time. She grabbed her purse and walked to the door. Stopped, turned back. You know what your problem is, Julian? You never grew up. You're still a child who needs his mommy to take care of him. And now that she's gone, you don't know how to function. That's pathetic. She left. He didn't watch her go. Just sat there, alone in the dark, with the evidence of his failures spread out in front of him. Holly came by every few days after that, brought him food that he mostly didn't eat, made him shower when the smell got too bad, forced him to clean up at least some of the mess, sat with him while he cried and talked and tried to process what he'd lost. She's not coming back, is she? He asked one night, maybe 2 weeks after she'd left. Holly was quiet for a long time. Then she said, No, I don't think she is. Not anytime soon, maybe not ever. What do I do? You learn from this. You become someone she'd be proud of. You grow up, actually grow up this time. It's too late. I ruined everything. Maybe, but you try anyway. You work on yourself. You figure out why you said those things. You figure out why you took her for granted. You become someone who would never do this again. How? Therapy. Real therapy, not just talking to me. Work on yourself. Figure out who you are when you're not being enabled. Learn to stand on your own feet. Kenneth came by once, maybe 3 weeks in, sat across from Julian at the dining table, looked at all the papers still spread out like evidence at a crime scene. "You know, she loved you more than anything," Kenneth said, his voice matter-of-fact. "That was her greatest strength and her fatal weakness. She loved you so much she couldn't see that she was hurting you by helping you. I destroyed her." "Yes, you did." Julian flinched at the bluntness. "Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I'm dying inside knowing what I did? Knowing it and accepting it are different things. You can spend the rest of your life feeling guilty, wallowing in it, using it as another excuse to fail. Or you can spend it becoming someone who would never do this again. Your choice." "How do I do that?" "You start by understanding what you took for granted, really understanding it, not just knowing it intellectually. Then you make sure you never take anyone for granted again. You learn to say thank you. You learn to ask instead of assuming. You learn that love isn't automatic or infinite or unbreakable. You learn that people have limits, even mothers. I want to tell her I'm sorry." "Then you'd better hope she gives you that chance someday." "But Julian? She doesn't owe you that. She doesn't owe you forgiveness or closure or another chance. She doesn't owe you anything, not anymore. You used up all your credits with her. The account is closed." Months passed. Winter turned to spring. Julian got a new job, eventually, something entry-level with better hours and less stress. Started therapy with a woman who specialized in family dynamics and adult children of divorce. Worked on himself in ways he should have years ago. Joined a support group for people trying to repair damaged relationships. Started volunteering at a food bank and trying to give back somehow, trying to be useful. Small steps, slow progress. Some days he felt like he was moving forward. Other days he felt like he was drowning. But he thought about her every single day, multiple times a day. Wondered where she was. If she was happy, if she was safe, if she ever thought about him. If she hated him or pitied him or had just erased him completely from her mind. He found an old photo album in a box in his closet one Saturday afternoon while finally cleaning his house properly. Pictures of him as a kid, birthday parties with homemade cakes, school plays where she sat in the front row, Little League games where she cheered louder than anyone else, Christmas mornings, first day of school pictures, graduation. In every single picture, his mom was there, smiling, proud, tired sometimes. He could see it now in the lines around her eyes. But always there, always in the background, making everything happen, holding everything together. He'd never noticed how tired she looked, how worn down, how much effort it took to keep him happy and safe and provided for. He cried over those photos for hours, sitting on his bedroom floor, seeing for the first time what he'd been too self-absorbed to see before. Then one day, 3 months after she left, a letter arrived. No return address, postmarked from somewhere he'd never heard of. Some small coastal town in Florida he had to look up on Google Maps. His hands shook as he opened it. He almost couldn't breathe. Inside was a single piece of paper and a photograph. The letter was short. Her handwriting, but looser somehow, like she'd been more relaxed when she wrote it. "Julian, I'm safe. I'm living for myself for the first time in 30 years. I'm waking up when I want to. I'm eating what I want to eat. I'm making friends who know nothing about my past, who know me as just Lena, not as someone's ex-wife or someone's mother. I'm learning to paint. Badly, but I'm learning. I'm watching sunrises from my porch. I'm reading books for pleasure. I'm living. Don't look for me. I don't want to be found. Not now. Maybe not ever. This isn't a game or a test. This is me protecting myself from more hurt. If you ever want to speak again, you need to learn how to value people before you lose them. You need to learn that love is a verb, not a noun. That it requires action and respect and reciprocity, not just feeling. That it can be worn down and used up and destroyed by neglect and cruelty. I loved you more than life itself. But that kind of love, when it's not returned, when it's taken for granted, when it's actively rejected, will hollow you out until there's nothing left but an empty shell pretending to be a person. I'm finally filling myself back up, slowly, carefully, learning who I am when I'm not defined by what I can give you. I hope you find your own way to do the same. I hope you become someone who would never do to another person what you did to me. I hope you learn and grow and change, but mostly I just hope you're okay. Because despite everything, despite the hurt and the anger and the betrayal, you're still my son. And some part of me will always love you, but I love myself more now. And that has to be enough. Take care of yourself. Mom. Julian read it 3 times. 4. 5. Each time he felt the words cut deeper, felt them settling into his bones. She was alive. She was safe. She was happy. And she was done with him. He looked at the photograph. A quiet beach at sunrise. The sky was painted in impossible shades of pink and gold and purple, like something from a dream. Gentle waves washing up on pristine sand, palm trees swaying in the distance. And there, in the foreground, a single set of footprints leading toward the water, toward the horizon, toward something new and unknown. Freedom, captured in a photograph. Julian held that photograph and broke apart completely. Not the angry, confused crying from before. Not the desperate sobbing from when he first realized she was gone. This was grief. Pure, absolute grief for something he'd destroyed that could never be rebuilt. Grief for a relationship that was dead. Grief for the mother he'd lost not to death, but to his own cruelty. Because he finally understood. His mother hadn't stopped existing. She'd just stopped existing for him. She'd stopped dying for him. And he'd lost her forever the moment he'd wished her away. He sat on his floor, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd done for him, holding a photograph of her freedom, and finally felt the full weight of what he'd destroyed. Not just a relationship, a person, someone who'd loved him completely, selflessly, exhaustingly, and gotten nothing in return except the wish that she would disappear. So she had.